Let's turn, if we may, to Brexit.
Yeah.
How do you think the general election result has changed the negotiating position Britain should take for Brexit?
Well, I think the Prime Minister's got us into a complete mess. She's got no mandate here, and she's got no authority abroad, and the negotiations start tomorrow. And things have to change. Her approach so far has alienated our allies in Europe. It's weakened our position with the EU.
Okay.
And it's actually got us into the worst possible starting position.
But you see, what people say to me is that actually, when you look at it, Labour's position on Brexit is identical to Theresa May's position. So let me test that, if I may, with some yes or no questions, if I can.
Yes.
First of all, do you accept that we are leaving the EU, come what may?
Yes, we've been clear about that from
yes.
the absolute start.
OK. Second, are you against a second referendum?
A second referendum cannot take place
Yes.
Until after we've left the EU, and therefore it's not viable.
So that's not viable. OK, third question. Are there any circumstances in which you think Britain should stay inside the single market?
Well, so far as the single market is concerned, our manifesto is clear. We want to retain the benefits of the single market and the customs union. Formal membership, full membership, is only available to EU member states. And that's why there's all the discussion about what sort of model that gets us
So that
close
sounds to me like a no, we cannot stay inside the single market.
Not in an unreformed, unchanged way, because you have to be a full EU member, and that's not consistent.
You see, you're not quite giving me a clear answer on that. You think the single market could be changed or reformed in a way that allows us to stay inside. Is that right?
I think the mistake we're all making here is to put the model before the outcome. What we want is tariff-free access to the single market, no customs duties that make it more difficult for people to trade in the future. That's what really matters. And the flip side of that, from the EU point of view, is how do we make sure there's a level playing field? How do we make sure that regulations apply across the board? That's what we're talking about. It's the outcome, and getting in the weeds of the model, actually, I think, loses the focus on the outcome.
I understand that. I'm going to have one last go, because the Labour position, if I put it gently, is clear as mud on the single market. Well, let me just say, John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn have both said we're out of the single market. That's it. We can't stay inside the single market.
Andrew, you can only be a full member of the single market if you're an EU member, and therefore it is obvious that we're looking at something else. The question is, do we leave options on the table? And I've said repeatedly, yes, leave options on the table.
So
but
what
there
are
a
those
number
options?
Of different models.
So what are those options?
Focus on the outcomes, which I've just enumerated.
Yeah, but I'm asking specifically.
You can then, how you get to it, you can either take single market membership and say what needs to change to get us to the position we need to be in, or you can start with a sort of bare agreement and work up. What matters is the outcomes, because what we need is a deal that actually works for our country.
Would you sacrifice control over freedom of movement in order to stay inside the single, or have very good access to the single market?
Well, it's clear that freedom of movement will end when we leave the EU, and therefore the discussion we're having is what model fits with changes to freedom of movement plus the trade that we need.
So you could have some freedom of movement remaining.
Well, I don't understand this notion of some freedom of movement. In the end, immigration comes down to...
You sound like, in a very gentle way, you're saying exactly what Theresa May would say if she was sitting there.
No, Theresa May has taken the wrong approach. The tone and approach is completely wrong. I say we can't have membership because that was decided last year. We can have partnership if we change the tone and approach. Okay. We need to be much clearer about the benefits of the single market.
That's tone and words. But on the actual clear... Well, let me try one other thing. Customs union, in or out?
Well, I think that should be left on the table.
You see?
Well, because...
So we could stay inside the customs union?
Yes.
Well, that is the single biggest difference between you and the Conservative
Well, there's
Party.
also this notion of no deal being a viable deal, which Theresa May and the government have repeatedly said. No deal is what happens if you get to the end of the 2 years and you haven't been able to reach agreement. You're pushed over the cliff. To say I'll jump over the cliff isn't a negotiating stance that makes much sense.